This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, welcome everybody to Novak's webinar series. We've done quite a few of these. They've been going on for over a year now. We feel like we've had some great success. I know that we've had some great presenters come on and give a lot of really good information. We've had some successes reported back where people have used the information presented in the webinar to do great things. So we hope that continues. We have several, excuse me, regular webinar attendees on tonight, and for them, this webinar is going to be a little bit different. We wanted to try and bring to you not only some good information, but as our presenter tonight calls it, some edutainment or infotainment, meaning he's going to provide you with some great information about what you need to do to prepare for a long haul, an adventure ride, and things you might need to consider carrying, some things you definitely need to have along with you for safety's sake. So please, everyone, I'll remind you one more time, stay on mute. If you have questions, utilize the chat feature and type them in. They will get answered at the end. And with that, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce everyone to Eric Anderson. Eric is a colleague of mine. I've had the opportunity to work on and off with him for, probably 15 years throughout my career at the Motorcycle Industry Council and through several efforts of his where he's always been involved in the power sports community. He's a true enthusiast, and I think you'll hear tonight that he's a true character in the good way, meaning he loves life, gets a lot out of off-highway vehicle recreation, lives for it. It's his passion. It comes through when he talks about it. And that's why we really, really wanted to have him as a webinar presenter, because I think you'll notice the passion and desire and fun and all of those great words that we all share with our sport. And that really helps it when we're trying to get information as well. It just makes it more fun. So with that, I'll let Eric describe his role in the industry and his current roles and get on with it. So with that, Eric, you want to take over and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne, for the invitation, and welcome everyone to the Novak webinar. I've been around since way before even Novak was around and invented. My brother was the first land use planner for the Motorcycle Industry Council back in the early 80s. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, racing motocross, flying bush planes, and teaching biology back in the late 70s when I ended up riding home. So I'm a Trans-Africa kind of guy too on a motorcycle. I'm a four-wheel driver. My parents took my brother and I to Baja in the 60s and 70s in Land Rovers. So we've been packing and racking and stacking stuff for off-road adventures for, more than 40, 50 years here, both motorcycles and 4x4s. I ended up working for the Motorcycle Industry Council as a technical analyst, kind of an intermediary between the OEMs and the federal government at the time when the Clean Air Act and the Noise Control Act were new. Some of you weren't born yet, but I've been around, and as you can see from the picture, I absolutely love what I do. I've worked not only at the MIC, but worked then for many, many years building safety apparel, helmets, protective gear in the industry. If you know brands like Heingericka, First Gear, Scorpion. We also built Harley Davidson, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki riding gear for motorcycles for decades at Intersport Fashions West. Later, Scorpion, a company I helped build, and then Roland Sands and Motorsport Aftermarket Group. And then I've been working for myself for the last 6 years at Vroom Network. Been on the Motorcycle Industry Council Board of Directors for the last 20 years, and just gave my seat up to a newer, younger guy so I can get off-road a little more these days. And I'm enjoying it tremendously as I work now for Mahindra Automotive North America and helped bring the Roxor four-wheel drive vehicle to market. And Dwayne, anything else?
I would just add that you're a lot of fun to be around, and you're great for our industry because you bring so much energy. And that's one of the reasons we love having you involved to Novak when you can and to do things like you're about to do tonight. With that, you'll get a small. Go ahead.
Yep. I do have fun, but I am a safety guy too. I mean, I worked for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation for a couple of years before graduating over to the MIC. So I really understand risk management I love to go out to where I've never been before, and those are inherent risks because you don't know what you're going to find. There's a great quote from the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, the inventor of modern mountain climbing equipment, who says, adventure never really starts until everything goes wrong. I'm not really sure I agree with that, but you understand the concept is that adventure, to a certain degree, is the unexpected. And when there is something unexpected that happens off-road or off the grid or far away from where a cell phone can help you, you need to be prepared. And that's what's to follow in this webinar. Dwayne?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and to kick this off, Eric recently did a video for Roxor called Rack 'em and Stack 'em. And we thought it would be a good overview of the things that he's going to cover in the conversation we're going to have to show that to you. So it's only a few minutes. And with that, I'm going to ask Laura to go ahead and cue up the video. And Laura, it doesn't sound like we have the audio.
Maybe I'll narrate.
We may need. Laura, can you get the audio going, please?
I actually only did this about 2 weeks ago. Just became public this week.
Yeah, and Eric, while she's working on that, we sent out the bug out bag video you did as well as sort of a teaser to what we were going to do tonight. This is a different video and has different information, but we want to hopefully give you a chance to see it. Laura, you want to try one more time? If not, we'll move on.
And while Laura's figuring out the technical aspects, you can see I've got 4 ammo boxes there. I kind of compartmentalize things into 4 areas. You know, section 1 on the left is tools and vehicle needs. Section 2 there by my left knee is survival, water, first aid needs. Section 3 there behind the blue lantern box is camping, cooking, and food. And section 4 is personal hygiene and sanitation. So I just like to kind of block things out and then follow an expedition list, keep things separate so you know what you're going to need to get to during the day, which is on top, and then stuff for dry camping at night, which is always on the bottom.
So this
Any
is
luck with
Laura.
audio?
I'm back, so we should be able to get this to go now.
Thanks, Laura.
Uh-huh.
Hi, I'm Eric Anderson from Roxor, Mahindra Automotive North America and Roxor Adventure Magazine with another fun-filled and informational episode on how to prepare and pack your vehicle. You know, the further off the grid you go and the longer you're gone, the higher the chances are you're going to need something that you just forgot or don't have. So prepping and packing for a long trip off-road requires a lot more than just, the common bug-out bag that we covered in one of our other previous episodes. An off-road driver and the likely passenger have more than themselves to look after because the vehicle itself has needs, especially if it's abused or broken in hardcore driving situations. Roxors are some of the most durable vehicles on the planet due to their super simple and almost analog construction. So one might call them old school slow, while we long distance off-roaders call them stone cold reliable. No, they aren't the fastest vehicle out there, but you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get to where you want to go. Whatever vehicle you choose, be sure you're thinking of its needs as well as your own before packing for your trip. Start to compartmentalize your brain and your gear into 4 sections. So this is section 1, all the tools and vehicle needs, mostly in one box, I like to carry a compressor with a long extension cord so you can get to all 4 tires. I also like to carry a bottle jack, always nice to have just in case the high lift jack isn't necessary. These are various and sundry recovery ropes, bubble rope, tow rope, a snap strap, a little bit of mule tape, and then these are recovery ropes that go around the tree, and of course the winch control. All that's going to go under the seat in the Roxor. Big, generously sized toolboxes underneath. Always got to have a funnel for oil, a tire repair kit, which I have in an old leather bag. We've got jumper cables, a couple of different tools kits. One will go under the seat, one in this box, lug wrench, oils, tire repair, as well as brake fluid, and a siphon hose. I also have this old gas can that's been converted into a toolbox. Got lots of epoxy, bar stop things for radiators, and an extra first aid kit. Section 2, survival, water, first aid. I like to carry water in a blob because as the trip goes on, it gets smaller. Always carry first aid. In fact, I've got a couple of first aid kits in here, an emergency parka, and I always carry plastic ponchos. I threw in my GPS, which will actually go on the dashboard of the Roxor, along with my satellite tracker. This is the emergency LED light, as well as the power pack for starting a vehicle with dead batteries. It also charges cell phones. I love to take glow sticks just in case. You can read by them, or you can use them in an emergency, and I always carry trash bags too. These are not only just for trash, but also for waterproofing and dust-proofing anything that really needs it inside these ammo boxes. So this is section 3, cooking and camping needs, and food. I carry dehydrated food in a dry bag like this. It's got a Coleman lantern along with fuel for the stove right here too. A light straw just in case for purifying water. Always carry a big lighter, match, waterproof matches, anything that you need there, or pot. Obviously, insect repellent, my classic coffee pot that's been around the world with me, a sledgehammer for tent stakes, sleeping bag, tent, and sleeping pad. I also have some personal gear back here in another waterproof bag. This is section 4, sanitation, personal hygiene needs. I always like to carry a bag or bucket. This works to hold water as well, and a folding shovel with toilet paper. The rubber band's a really good idea. And then this is the dugout bag from my previous episode with all my personal needs inside. We're not done yet because we still need to stack all this in the cargo area and tie it down securely so it doesn't bounce or squeak on all those big bumps we're planning on hitting and rolling over today. Big boxes go on the bottom, smaller ones on top, soft goods go in between, and awkwardly shaped chairs can strap on last to hold the pile all together. Use these tie-down anchors already on Roxor's rear cargo area. Now you're ready, mission ready. Head out and enjoy the wild, unpredictable adventure out there somewhere near the horizon. Take pictures and share them with us at #RoxorOffroad. We'd love to see how you prepare for your adventure.
All right. Thanks, Laura, for getting that video going. And thanks, Eric, for putting something like that out to really get us started on this conversation about what you need. And so we've built this as an opportunity for you to tell the stories of your adventures, and you have many, and as you mentioned, you've been doing this for decades, so you probably know where all the skeletons are buried, so to speak. But I thought we'd kick this off with a question to you. So now that we know a bit about what we need to take with us on an OHV adventure, I thought we might change it up a little bit and ask you to tell us a bit about a time you were underprepared and something that you discussed in the video, or maybe something that you didn't, that would have been very helpful had you had it on one of these adventures where you didn't quite have what you needed.
Yeah, certainly, especially on 4 wheels. I mean, I can answer that in 2 different ways, motorcycles and 4x4s, but I'll answer this one as a 4x4 enthusiast. You know, you think you have a winch, you got it all, but oftentimes you get stuck in the mud or the sand, and there's no anchor point for the winch. There's no trees, there's no rocks, and you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. So, you try and bury a shovel as an anchor point. And I'll tell you, if any of you know what a pull pal is, it's one of the best things you can carry. A pull pal is basically an anchor, a giant shovel that you can bury in the sand or bury in the mud if there's no anchor point to pull from. We used to have to, in our old Land Rovers in Baja, bury the spare tire 3 feet in the sand as an anchor point to attach the winch to haul ourselves out. But a pull pal is a lot easier. It's a really cool device. And when our Roxors enter the NORRA 1000 or the Sonora Rally, they always carry pull pals. And they've rescued quite a few other competitors using them too, not only to pull themselves out, but to pull other competitors out. And that's one thing I'll say, Dwayne, before turning it back to you, is oftentimes this preparation is not just for yourself, it's for other people that you meet along the trail that are way less prepared than you are. And it seems to happen a lot out there. Back to you.
Awesome. So it sounds like you've learned the hard way that you might need a way to anchor down to help get yourself out with a winch. That's the kind of
and there's all little things. I think I told you before we even kicked off tonight, that every time I go out, I'm always refining the recipe on what to take, and everything gets smaller. Now, I take a sponge before I go out to wash my dirty dishes, and I cut it into quarters. I take this little tiny sponge and a little tiny eyedropper glass full of Dr. Bronner's soap, to wash my dishes with. It gets, especially on a motorcycle, you've got to be really, really space conservative and space sensitive to make sure everything fits. And every time I go camping, I get better at it. It's a never-ending process, kind of like life. It's never perfect, but that's kind of the fun of it, is to get better and better and smarter about what to carry. And I've always been guilty of being the mothership, carrying too much stuff, but oftentimes it really, really comes in handy, and you make a lot of friends out on the trail because you have a bubble rope, or you have an extra Bic lighter, or you have a pull pal. It's funny how, or a poncho, a cheap rubber poncho or plastic poncho for $3 at Walmart. You can throw it to somebody who's really cold. On the trail, they're wet, it's been raining, they didn't expect it to be, but this will help preserve your body heat while we get you warmed up and get a campfire started. All kinds of little stuff that happens. We'll get to navigation later, but that's a real important part too when we get to satellite trackers. But the picture you see on the screen there are just sort of some of the things that I've organized over the years to carry with me. As small as they are, they're really, really important. Dwayne?
Yeah, that's actually a nice segue in to our next question. But first, I want to remind people, if you have questions as they come up, please use the chat feature and type it in, and Laura and I will monitor those as we go along. My next question is, so we know a little bit about your narrow miss, but I want you to maybe tell us something about an item that maybe you come across people and they think, oh, you don't need that, that's not necessary, but that item bailed you out in some way. And can you give us an example of something like that, and maybe tell us where you were and what kind of adventure you were on?
The kind of thing that bailed me out, I did Trans-Africa in the late 70s, riding home from my Peace Corps assignment in Kenya, East Africa. And I thought I had everything I needed. I did play around with air pressure through the sand dunes in the Sahara. I got stuck a lot, but I will tell you, I learned very early on that tire pressure is really, really important, especially when soft conditions. And of course, if you drop your motorcycle tire pressure, in this case, down too low, you spin the tube and tear out the stem if you don't have a rim lock. But I figured out right around 12 to 15 PSI was perfect for crossing the Sahara Desert, rather than 20 or 29 or 30 PSI. I mean, it's just things like that will make life so much easier. So much is going on off-road that you really have to be aware of the vehicle's needs. And too many people forget tire pressure. Low-speed rocks, you need low pressure. High-speed rocks, you need higher pressure. Otherwise, you dent rims. It's all about really understanding and reading the terrain and knowing what that vehicle is going to need. And if you're really, really off the grid far, you got to get home, you better treat your machine with respect. My father taught me that very early on in the late 60s and 70s when we were running around in Baja solo, in a 4-seat Land Rover Series 2A, that you really have to treat the machine with respect. This is not the Dakar Rally where you have an entire pit crew waiting for you at the other end or at a pit stop. It just doesn't happen that way. If you're alone, you've got to be self-sufficient in these locations. And I will say little things like a Bic lighter, a really nice Leatherman, a tire pressure gauge, and now with high technology, I love these satellite trackers.
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a second with the satellites and all of that. And no, really good detail there, and understanding that sometimes the details are what matter, and you have to pay attention. So I'm going to kind of go a little off script and ask you two questions at once. The first I wanted to ask you is, what are one or two items that you now view as critical that are always in your bug out bag or always in your kit that maybe you were initially skeptical of, and what changed your mind? And if there was some kind of event that happened that made you say, I don't know why I ever carried this, but now I do. And then the second question would be, are there resources you know of where people can get a good start on a checklist?
Sure. I'll say to the first question. I carry a mini iPad, but also the paper map too. I really like a mini iPad as a map. Download things like Avenza maps onto it. You buy the map for your state or the area where you're going to be traveling. You download it onto your iPad. It's a little bigger than a smartphone. Smartphones are great. Even off-road, when you download these maps, they still work because a cell phone has a geolocation device on it. So if you preload maps onto your digital device, they will still work off the grid. You don't have cell phone service, you won't be able to email, but the geolocation device on that cell phone still works off the grid. So it will still show you exactly where you are. So EarthMate and Avenza are big friends of mine. Yeah, Google Earth too, but you can't really download those maps onto a small phone. I bought myself an iPad and downloaded those two, and there are many others also that you can download the detailed maps first and then find your location wherever you are. The other device that I just absolutely rely on all the time, and I just got back from a 3-day trek adventure motorcycling through central Nevada, is my satellite tracker. And you can have a Spot. There's a Spot new generation 3 or 4. I use the DeLorme InReach, which now Garmin owns. And I love to share my location with my wife and my loved ones. Basically every couple of hours, they know where I am. And if I also can have pre-programmed messages to them every couple of hours. And when I hit a camp spot, I say, this is where I'm staying this evening. And it sends it through a satellite, not through my cell phone, but straight from the location device. And the DeLorme InReach, many of you know DeLorme from map making, this little device called InReach, and you can Google it. It's just so valuable to me, so easy to use, and it has an SOS button on it. You can text through the device using your smartphone. If you need a helicopter and there's an emergency, and I have used it for that in Death Valley, you can hit that SOS button and the cavalry will come. With texting, I needed actually a life flight for a friend, and we were able to text that we needed a helicopter. Please don't send a Ranger with a pickup truck. We have a head injury, and that little device saved a life. It really did. So I'm really big on satellite trackers, either a Spot, if you like that technology, or the DeLorme Reach. And I think your second question, Dwayne, was about where to go find a checklist. We have an expedition booklet available on the Roxor website at roxoroffroad.com under the blog section. Expedition booklet, it's called. You can download that. That's pretty cool. There's also lots of others if you just Google expedition checklists or off-highway vehicle OHV checklists. There's lots of different, thoughts out there about how to prepare for an off-road adventure, because you really are by yourself out there. You are self-sufficient, and you have to be able to, in most cases, get yourself out of there. If you get yourself into trouble out there, better know how to fix it and come back, or call a friend. And if you're off the grid, sometimes a sat phone is a really nice thing to have. And those are rentable. You can rent them anytime you need. If you know you're going to be off the grid for a big trip or a long trip, I would recommend taking a sat phone. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, no, great information. And I was set to ask you about the need for, something like Spot or these other navigation devices or location tools. So thanks for covering that. I think we cannot stress enough the importance of being able to communicate. I mean, we're very fortunate to live in a world where even when we're in the most desolate or far out places, we're able to have some kind of communication. And I really enjoyed that you were highlighted that you can rent sat phones. I mean, these things are not inaccessible, and certainly something like a Spot or a Spot product can really make a big difference if you need help to come your way. Also, I'm going to quickly jump in here and do a shameless plug. Since we're talking about mapping technology, particularly downloadable or app-based mapping products that are out there. Yesterday, Novak put out on its website and sent to our email list an article about the mapping applications of which Novak is aware. We don't claim for it to be comprehensive. In fact, in the article, we've asked everyone who has an idea of a mapping application or computer-based map system that they're aware of and use and they've had be successful for them to let us know about them. So if you haven't already, take a second, go to nohvcc.org and look at that article. We have 10 or 11, I think, listed. There are undoubtedly more. If you know of others that are good, please let us know about them. What we hope to ultimately do with that information is make a permanent section on our site in our online resource hub where anybody who's looking for this information can go through and see what fits for them. Some of these mapping applications are state specific, like Cotrex in Colorado, where you have state agencies involved in creating a mapping product that's really providing great information to users and really gives them an opportunity to know where they are on the ground, and you can follow along. But Eric touched on this, and I'm going to ask him to delve in a little bit further here, and that's these applications are fantastic. When they work properly, you know where you're at. You can see yourself on the map on the screen, and you really know where you're going. But batteries die, glitches happen, hard drives crash, and all of that. So, Eric, I wonder if you expound just a little bit on the need to carry a paper map, or if you believe there is a need to carry a paper map.
I actually love a paper map, and I'll tell you during the day that I like a paper map. It's not on the trail. It's the night before or it's the morning before you start driving, because it gives your mind the big picture. You know you're generally going northeast, or you know you're generally going in this direction. You kind of look at this map and you know the topographic area that you're going to kind of go through. So you have the big picture in your head. And once you fold that paper map up, and plus, let me backtrack. When that big paper map is open, there's usually 3 or 4 or 5 people standing around, part of your group, and they get the big picture. Then, this is where we're going to go, this is where we're going to end up, and we plan on camping over here. Then once you fold that big picture up, everybody switches to digital, small picture, smartphone, mini iPad, GPS screens. Everything gets smaller. And you start to drill down on where the next turn is 400 feet down the trail, or where the next mountain is less than a mile away. What's great about the paper map is you can see 20, 30, 50, 150 miles away from where you're really going to end up at the end of the day. So I love going from 40,000 feet with a paper map down to ground zero with a GPS. That's the value of a paper map, big picture stuff. Sort of while we're on that topic, I don't know whether you can go back one slide to those devices or not, but what's really great about that InReach, that little yellow one up there, the Spot does the same thing, is if you can see in the middle of it, it's already set on the little green square in the middle is on messages. I have preset messages in there. I'm camping here, I'm starting from here, and everything's good. Those 3 messages can be sending to my wife when I start the trip, when I end the day. My daughters know where I am. They know that I'm fine. And you can actually preset people's SMS or text message information in there, as well as their email. And my wife gets an email and a text every 4 to 6 hours on where I am when I'm off the grid. And it's kind of cool to have, doesn't have to be your wife because she might be with you. It could be some third party that's just tracking where you are. I had a friend who just did the whole Malcolm Smith Baja ride to La Paz. I tracked him every morning when I had my coffee. It was really fun to watch. It's kind of sport. When you got a friend that's out there in the middle of nowhere and he's got you on your satellite tracking device software, you can see where he is at any moment in time. And it's kind of cool. Anyway, Spot does that too. And I don't know whether that Gen 3 picture is the latest one. They might have a Gen 4. Really nice technology that's out there, and it really helps us all communicate whether we're doing well or whether we need help. Dwayne?
Awesome, thank you. And quick reminder, use the chat feature if you have questions, we'll get them asked. So we've kind of gone at this, and we showed the video, showed the full panoply of things that you pack into your vehicle when you have that luxury. Understand that if you're on a motorcycle or an ATV, or in many cases even a side-by-side, you might not have that same room, but you get an idea of the sorts of things that you need to have with you. But I want to delve into the why do you need to take all this stuff. And the reason I want to ask it this way is because you've been all over the world on an OHV, and you've been in desolate places, and you've been far away, and you've been close to home, I bet, and felt pretty far away based on what was happening. With the advent of all these survivor shows, I have the false sense of security that, oh, it'd be fine. If I have to spend a night in the woods, not a big deal. I don't know if that's true. So what I'd like to ask is, what's the real risk of exposure, should you get stranded? How long can you, quote unquote, make it if you don't have some of these things? And what are their consequences if you're not prepared?
Well, it also depends on the weather. And I always am looking at the weather before I go out on an adventure, because you know how to dress, you know what to carry. If things are wet and cold, obviously the answer to that question is a lot shorter period of time. You can certainly build fires. You need fire-making materials to stay warm. One of the things we learned very early on, really in Baja with search and rescue work, was that we told riders, whoever went down with us on tour companies to Baja, for the tour of the Baja 1000 course, was that if you ever run out of fuel or if you ever break down, never, ever leave your vehicle. It's always easier to find the vehicle than it is a person. A vehicle leaves big tracks. It's more easily spotted nowadays from either a drone or a satellite if we need to. If it has a tracking device on it, it's easier to find. So that rule, never leave the vehicle, still stays to this day. It's always easy for someone to backtrack. We have our Baja method when we travel in a group of vehicles. You are always responsible for the vehicle behind you to make the turn. Assuming that they don't have GPS, they don't know where they're going, they're just following you, but to stay out of their dust, they're staying a little bit further back And if they don't see you make that turn, it's really easy to get separated. So that was always one of our number 1 or 2 rules, was you're responsible for the person behind you. That's always really critical when there's a group involved. And back to your question, I don't know that answers all of it, but help me, Dwayne, with sort of some of the other related topics. I mean, when we crossed Africa, with motorcycles, it was really easy to follow the dust trail for a long time, but if it gets into a wooded section or a rocky section and the dust disappears, suddenly the guy who's following the dust trail is lost. And that's really easy to occur. The rule is stop dead. Don't move. Don't look around. Don't go off the trail. Let the guy who's in front of you come back and find you. And that's really difficult to do, to wait. Most people get curious and want to veer off the track or wander around, and that's when they get lost. Wait for the person in front of you to come back and find you. If you always stay true to that rule, you won't get lost.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great advice. And I think part of what we want to impress here upon everyone is, we all get out on these vehicles. We all, our chosen way, and some of us stay pretty close to home. Some of us go to Baja, or even other places overseas.
Right.
But everything that happens out there, that happens in Baja, can happen at a local trail. It can be exacerbated very quickly. So being prepared is always a good idea, even if you're not quote unquote preparing for the long haul. But I just really wanted to impress upon everyone how quickly things can go wrong. And as Eric described, if you're the following vehicle and you get off path and you're somewhere where you don't know how to get back, it can be a matter of hours before, if it's hot, you could be dehydrated. If it's cold, you could get frostbite. If it's, many other things. So really,
well, Dwayne,
go ahead. Yeah, love it.
You're talking about chaos theory, and I don't know whether many of you studied chaos theory, but if something goes wrong, it also makes it easier for other things to go wrong. And it's a domino effect. And this has happened to me, honestly, too many times. And, we've had to pull out search and rescue crews or rent airplanes out of Brown Field in San Diego and go find people lost in Baja. Fortunately, everyone survived and was fine, but they broke the rules. Their motorcycles ran out of gas. They started walking. They didn't stay with their vehicles. We found the vehicles literally within hours, but the people were gone, that kind of thing. But, that's when people sort of start to get on the edge of panic and do other sort of stupid things. You showed that dash sticker on a Roxor. Everyone comes equipped, but don't do anything stupid. We actually got our legal department to approve that. I really enjoy that sticker too, because oftentimes when something goes wrong, that's when you choose to do something stupid because you're not thinking straight. Something's already gone wrong, and your brain starts to edge towards a panic zone. And then or an unfamiliar zone. Well, I don't have water. I don't have a tow rope. I don't have a winch. I don't have a buddy to get me out. I don't have a navigational device. I'm not sure where I am. I don't have a big lighter to light a fire. I mean, this is when things start to compound. And, we really want people to understand that you need to be prepared when you're off road with a lot of plan B, plan C, and plan D. What are you going to do if this happens, and this happens? And part of that planning is actually really fun, but learning that strategy, it's no fun when you're at the effect of it, though. And you've got to pull into search and rescue mode. That's not fun. And that's what we're all trying to prevent here. Dwayne?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned the word planning, because we were trying to talk a little bit about the things that you need to have with you: a way to start a fire, protection from the elements, winches, food, water. gas if you can carry it, all these things that are necessary that you're going to need if you're out there. But there's more to planning than just what's going to be in or on the vehicle. And I wonder if you would talk a few minutes about what do you need, who do you need to notify, what information do you need to leave at home so that others, the people that care about you, know where you're at or how to get to you or where you might be if your signaling device stops working or if you're not unable to get in touch with them and you don't have cell service. What do you do, Eric, when you're going on one of these trips? Who do you let know what, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends who I ride with and drive with here, and if they're not with me on an adventure, they're usually the ones who are also on my satellite tracking device messaging system. Not only my wife, but my other buddies who have trucks. If I need to be rescued, you know, I'm likely not going to call the search and rescue team. I'm going to call these guys who have a truck, who know where I am. Here's my latitude and longitude, which I know from my map system, and I can communicate that. A lot of people who may not be off-road that much or, you know, are just out for a day trip may not think about a lot of these details. Or they're still within cell phone range. That's really nice. If they're within cell phone range, they can call somebody and say, hey, I got two flat tires and, you know, my spare's already been used. I really need help. Can you come and get me or bring a new tube or a new tire and we can drive out? You know, that kind of level of communication where you need it. But that's difficult. I mean, I really find that these checklists help prevent most of the drama that can occur off-road. And this little one that you're looking at is really only part of it. These are medical details that I leave behind, not only with my wife, but my other off-roading buddies that are not driving with me. If they're not on the trek or the trip with me, they have this information. I have their phone number. I have their text messages. I can text them through my satellite tracking device or call them on my sat phone if I'm really in trouble, if I'm carrying a sat phone. I generally don't rent a sat phone unless I'm on like a 5 to 7 day extended trip off the grid. Usually I can communicate or get to a cell phone area very easily if it's just in my case in central Nevada. Yeah, 85% of our state is BLM land, and I'd say 85% of our state doesn't have cell service, but you can get to it with a local town pretty quickly. But yeah, your friends, your buddies need to know where you're going. And I usually leave an extra paper map with my wife. Here's where I'm going, and I circle it with a yellow highlighter. There's your first night out, second night out, third night out. That might change a little bit, but that's my plan, and I leave that behind. Dwayne?
Yeah, no, awesome. And, you know, I think much of this discussion that we've been having sort of assumes that us, the people who would be the primary rider, the people we're going out with, will not be incapacitated, but that's not an impossibility. Unfortunately, the reality is, despite best precautions taken, accidents happen, mistakes happen, people get hurt. Maybe you don't have the capacity to use the phone yourself, but you'll obviously be riding with at least or driving with at least one other person. So I wonder if you'd hone in on the medical details section of this expedition checklist that we're looking at and explain why that's so important, because if you're not around to make the call, what could happen?
Right. You know, and you bring back memories of me making a call out in Death Valley, kind of oxymoronic that was the name, but luckily the fellow who I was riding with on a motorcycle just got into heavy sand out by the racetrack, you know, where the moving rocks are located in Death Valley, and just went down really hard. He had blood out of both ears, and, you know, it was a serious situation. Luckily, I was able to get phone service back at Tea Kettle Junction. It was 911 service only to call in a helicopter, which took longer than we expected, but we kept him warm. You know, we kept him hydrated as best we could, and we were able to use the medical details that were in the sleeve of his jacket. Many of the jackets now for motorcycle riders do have a little, what is it, a six-pointed star on their left sleeve, and inside is medical information. Sometimes helmets now also have, removable cheek pads in case there's a possible neck injury. But we were able to pull the cheek pads out very, very carefully, pull the helmet off while stabilizing his neck, just in case he had neck injuries, or a possible internal injury. We kept him warm with a aluminized Mylar space blanket, which I always carry as a safety device in my motorcycle as well as my four-wheel drive Roxor. We stuck that deep inside, right next to the skin, so it reflected body heat while we waited for the helicopter. And we were able to give the ambulance pilot, I'll call him because he was in a helicopter, not a car. We were able to give him blood type, allergies, all the information. He was a Brit friend of mine that was traveling from England. And we loaded him on a helicopter. We put in the Liat neck brace that he had on, which I think may have saved his neck, possibly his life. And we also included the helmet. We got on a helicopter and took him to Las Vegas Medical Center. And just so everybody knows, he's fine. It all worked just as it was supposed to. He's now living in the south of France on a vineyard, and enjoying life on his new BMW GS. So that was a really, really great story because we had all the right information, because we had communication to a 911, and we were able to get a helicopter, and the British Health Service paid for it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you
Dwayne?
gotta love it when a story works out, but that story worked out because of the preparation, which is really what we want to convey with this webinar. If you're prepared, bad things can happen, and you can have a happy ending to your story. If you're unprepared, maybe not such a happy story. So that's really what we're trying to impress upon everyone with this webinar. Also, you mentioned.
Well, it was.
Go ahead.
And after that, after we waited, it was dark when the helicopter left. Then the three of us that were left still had to ride out. and that's where I talked about kind of chaos theory. I just pulled everybody together. I said, look, we just had a tremendous success. We are not going to have any more drama. We're going to ride out of here slowly, safely. As we came in, we just happened to have this mishap, but we don't need to continue this domino effect of injury or of mishaps. So let's ride carefully, let's ride safely, because when you're adrenalized and you're sort of in a panic mode, you really have to have someone calm the whole group down. You've just succeeded in getting them on a helicopter. Thank you very much. That episode's over. Now we have 140 miles to ride back in the dark. It's freezing cold, it's windy, and here's how we're going to do it. You really got to have almost a military chain of command of sanity to rescue the rest of you. Because, now that the injured party's gone and he's taken care of with the best of care, now we got to get out. So that wasn't the end of the story. And we all got out fine. So it was a great story, but, somebody ran out of gas and somebody's headlight fell off, and it continued to be a very, very long and late night, but with a great successful ending.
Yeah, love it when it works out like that. And I can personally attest to the need to have, as something like a field general, someone who remains calm and knows what they're doing. And my personal experience is I had a little get off on a road bike out in Idaho, actually, miles from anywhere it seemed like. And many of you may know Nick Harris, who works for the American Motorcyclists Association. I was riding with him, and he had recently taken a course at a local dealership in Sacramento that prepared him for just that eventuality. He really was able to take control of the scene, get the bike off the road, make sure I was okay, get everything settled down. So yeah, cool heads are also a part of preparation. And any kind of training you can avail yourself of, CPR, if there's some EMT light training you can do, if there's something like Nick did at his local dealership where they prepared you to plan for an accident. I recommend everyone avail themselves of those opportunities. And given this is a Novak webinar, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Novak's ethic, and that is most of the vehicles we've been talking about tonight. You need to wear safety gear. That's certainly for dirt bikes, side by sides, ATVs, and Roxors. That means helmets, long sleeves, gloves, long pants, over the ankle boots, and eye protection. And that's really the first preparation. And it just makes sense. And the situation that Eric has described would have been a lot worse, I am sure, if his friend hadn't been geared up. So if there are any questions, type them into the chat function now. I have another question or two for Eric, but if you have specific questions you'd like to have answered, let's get them in. And so, Eric, one thing I would like to say is, we watched the video. Everybody got a sense of all of the stuff you take with you on your Roxor, but we know there's not enough room for that on a motorcycle. What are 3, 4, 5 key things that every motorcyclist should have on them, particularly when they're going to be gone, say, overnight or longer?
Well, on a motorcycle, water's heavy, so you got to pack it low. You know what I take? This is the fun part. Is I'll take box wine with me occasionally. Like half of a bag. I take the box and throw it away. But it'll also fill up with water, and I use a Life Straw or carbon filters. Those little blobs. If you empty out and save the bags in a box of wine, they hold as much or as little water as you want. You can put half a gallon or a gallon in there and just take all the air out, and it'll fit in the bottom of your soft luggage or your hard pannier, whatever you choose on your adventure bike. I happen to use the big giant loop overnight bags, but it's all a game of making things small, but you got to carry water. On a motorcycle, you've got to carry really layers of clothing. I'm still trying to figure out the best sleeping pad. I've got Thermarests now, but I got really slow leaks in them. So I'm looking at new kinds of pads, big Agnes bags and tents. All those things are real small, but you gotta have a really tiny stove. I have a stove that my father owned that runs on gasoline. It's an old Primus, I think. It doesn't run on any pre-box fuel. Those fuel canisters take up a lot of space. So the game on a motorcycle is small. And I'm learning now, like I said earlier, cut my sponges into quarters and take a quarter of a sponge, and eyedroppers and, like weird little stuff. So I enjoy motorcycle camping as much as I do Roxor camping, but when I'm in a 4-wheel drive, it's luxury because I can carry a bigger tent, I can carry more water, I can carry more food. I'm a big fan of REI dehydrated food. I eat that a lot when I'm on a motorcycle because it doesn't take up much space. Just add hot water and eat it right out of the bag. You're good.
Yeah,
Dwayne.
Thank you. And that's probably better than the Russ Enos method, my predecessor here at Novak, who always carried sardines and canned oysters for sustenance. I have to say that I did enjoy them with him on the side of a trail a few times, but yeah, he actually enjoys them all the time. So
I don't mind canned oysters, but I remember deep down in Baja, I did open up a can of Kippard snacks. If you know what those are, the British love them. Highly, highly salted sardines. I think I was thirsty for the next 72 hours. There was so much salt in those things.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that for sure. So we have a question here, and the question is, what is the battery life of a Spot or similar device? How long will they last on extended trips? And I'm going to add to that, what are some strategies, if you know the battery's going to die, that you could put in place to have other means of charging them?
Well, my InReach, for instance, over 3 days went from 100% charge down to about 78% charge after pinging my wife all day long for 3 days. So they're very significant. They have very long battery life. They don't take a lot. If you are on an extended trip, then you might look at one of these lithium-ion battery packs that I did carry also, which I carry because it can crank start a diesel Roxor or a motorcycle very easily. They're available at most power sports stores. There's a bunch of different brands, but they have every kind of connection, including little tiny jumper cables included in a zipped up bag. They're about $100 to $125. And it's great for jump starting a car that has a dead battery, or charging a phone, or charging a satellite device. So I always carry one of those little lithium ions. They also operate as a light in your tent too. So between the long life battery of a Spot or a DeLorme InReach, which will last probably 6 to 7 days, if you're in a car, you can obviously plug it into the cigarette lighter and charge it that way while you're driving during the day, as I do my smartphone anyway, and my iPad. The GPS is plugged right into the battery on anything that I'm riding, whether it's 2 wheels or 4. And I've turned into a GPS nerd. I know they're kind of weird people, but I really, really do like these things because it gives me a level of confidence of knowing exactly where I am, how far I've gone, and how many miles to the next destination. It really, really builds confidence. Dwayne?
Awesome. So we're right at an hour, which is where we like to cut these off because we know people have other things to do. But we want to really thank everyone for participating. If you continue to have questions or ideas, or would like to continue this discussion, you can see on your screen right now that there's some contact information up there. You can contact Eric has graciously offered to allow you to contact him directly with any questions, and you see his email address there. If you want to go through Novak, you can reach us at trailhead@nohvcc.org. That will go to all of the Novak staff, and we'll try to get your questions answered as well. Finally, want to again plug our most recent article that's up on our website about the mapping apps and website applications. Would love it if you have other thoughts about what needs to be added or anything you would like to add to that discussion. Again, we're going to use that article and the resultant information that comes in to inform a new section of our website that's going to be permanent. So that'll be a resource that we add for enthusiasts and managers, or anybody who's looking for a way to get outdoors on a off-highway vehicle and where they can do it legally. With that, I just want to say thank you to Eric. Eric is a friend, and he's somebody who has a wealth of knowledge and experience. Really, really enjoy having him involved with Novak to the extent he can be, and really love what he brings to the table. So thank you, Eric. And with that, I just want to remind everyone, if you're not already, sign up and register through the Novak website. You'll get emails about more of these webinars. We have several exciting ones coming up that we have planned, and the topics are varied and the presenters are different, and we're going to try to keep this as fresh and exciting as we can, particularly as we're going through this pandemic, and this is the primary way we can engage with big groups of people. So with that, if you have other ideas about what you'd like to have us cover on a webinar, again, use that email, trailhead@novac.org, and let us know. We'd love to be able to meet your needs if we can. One final time, thank you, Eric. That was really great. Thank you for taking the time to do that, and maybe we'll have something else you can talk to us about in the future.
Yeah, you're welcome, everyone. And if you want to see more videos that I've done for Roxor, just go to YouTube and type in Roxor Off-Road. Remember the off-road part, Roxor Off-Road. And we have a whole series of videos there, adventure videos, utility vehicles. We're really getting into farming and ranching these days too, but there's some really fun stuff, chasing and tracking wild Mustangs out there, hunting hogs in Texas, and working horse ranches in Michigan. So there's lots of content there on the Roxor Off-Road YouTube channel if anybody's interested. And thank you very much.
Yep. Echo that. And just thanks to everybody. Glad to see some familiar names and glad to see some new names. Please join on with all of these if you can, and we'll do our best to have good content. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night.